We arrived in Saigon late that same night, and we stayed in the Intercontinental Hotel, which is in the middle of the city. It's a super hotel, great rooms, impeccable service, and especially the breakfast was outstanding. Immediately we proceeded to take a walk to kind of get the feeling of the surroundings, because in reality up to that time the cities in which we have been rather small and not so urban. This is a very westernized city with great shopping. The people are dressed very Western and the girls are very attractive. We just took lots of pictures of them. Some city views from our hotel room, getting ready the next morning to visit the presidential palace that was dated in 1962, where the president had worked and surrendered in 1975 when the Vietnamese ended. It's modern and done during we visited the interiors of the big presidential palace, very Western with lots of meeting rooms, and partially now they're used for meetings, but it is mostly a museum. Very, very well maintained, and there were lots of Vietnamese visiting those facilities too, so it's very much part of their history. We continue visiting the rest of the presidential palace, where the president offices and all the telephones he used during very dramatic times. And later on we went to see also where he slept, because there was a whole wing in which there was a bedroom and there was also a dining room in which he attended and had his family life as well as when he invited friends. We had the opportunity to visit the basement level, which was like a bunker where where all the officials were during the war. And we could see his very plain desk that I think, if I remember correctly, was from steel case. And all the equipment they used for communication, and a small bedroom where they stayed during the wartime. palace, we walked around a bit to the city. Always lovely to see the brides that are photographed all over the place, as well as the students that are wearing different uniforms. We stopped to see what they call the old post office, a very European-looking, French-looking building that is still used as a post office, and it was interesting to see that they have kept the telephone booths, which have become, of course, a museum piece and the rarities that we don't not see at all in America. We moved to see the War Museum. I guess maybe sometimes the world has to learn from their mistakes. It was the wrong war. US did not understand what the issues were. The Vietnamese wanted their freedom, and US was fighting against the communism. There were incredible atrocities that took place, and most of it are photographed. But it's incredible because we asked, and the Vietnamese do not hate the US. Much on the contrary, US has become now one of their biggest traders. And the young people feel it was a wrong war, many people died, but we must forget and move on. For me, the most difficult to look at photographs were the one that depicts all the children of the Agent Orange. As I mentioned before, even today, after 50 years, those genes remain very active, and they have lots of children who are born without hands and feet.
In Saigon, we were met by Ho Cam Chong, that is the General Director of Amway Vietnam. It's a Malaysian, very enthusiastic, and took us to their office. As you can see, young people that make the double, as distributor of Amway, the double income of any best paid Vietnamese. For this reason, they have recruited 24,000 new distributors last year. Tremendous success that keep growing up. And very enthusiastic young people. Really was a pleasure to meet them and see how devoted they are to their business.
We visited a factory or a showroom in which they do lacquer. Of course, we saw a lot of lacquer all over the place, but not all of it is very well done. In this specific case, they do like 60 or 80, different layers of lacquer, and it has to be polished, and we saw part of it. We bought some things. It was nice. We went to see the water puppies, similar to the ones we saw in Hanoi. This was a little larger, and the story was a little bit different, but the whole idea, and it's kind of stimulating. It's very, very nicely done. That evening, we went to have dinner in a very lovely outdoor restaurant. Luis took a lot of videos because he was fascinated by the amount of motorcycles, motor scooters that were in the city. Actually, there are 10 million people living in Saigon, and I believe we were told that there are 8 million motor scooters or motorcycles, and they're all in the city at the same time.
I would like to tell you that compulsory just for boy. When we get 18 years old, we have to go to the army for 2 years. For 2 years. The military training, including education or not, mostly training, and shooting and training how to use the grenade and to be ready for any situation. And the whole area here, from here now, the land belongs to the army. And this is the district, we call it as a Tân district. We have a 24 district here. But this is the district for the northern people. The reason why.
Next morning, we drove for 1.5 hours in the outskirts of the city to see the Cuchi tunnels. Those were built at the beginning of the last century, and it was used for all the wars. They really are very, very extensive, several kilometers long, and they had been used, of course, extensively in the Vietnamese War. Some people actually lived there during the war to be safe from the attacks of the US Army. We had a guide that was an expert in Cuchi tunnels, and he showed us how this was used, as well as we saw some props made with mannequins to show us how they were dressed and what they did. Some of the group of our people went into the tunnels. Neither Luis and I thought it was that interesting because the tunnels are very small and you have to kind of duck to get in and out, and they're very black and there's not too much to see. We were told that the tunnels had to be made a little larger because if they were used by the tourists, many could not fit in. During our visit to the Cuchi tunnels, our guide, a local guide, demonstrated how the people used them. They were very narrow and they had a lot of leaves, so they could cover it with the leaves so they would not know where the entrance were. This looked like ant hills, where in reality the ventilation for the different tunnels that crisscross all of that area.
The Viet Cong were self-sufficient and have to build their clothing, and even the shoes that were made by cutting pieces of the tires or used tires of the trucks. As you can see there, everything was done underground, and some children were born underground, and the mothers live underground during the duration of the war. These people were very ingenious, have been practicing since they fought the French, and these tunnels were very hidden in a very dense jungle of the Mekong Delta. You can see there in some of these images how the soldiers will enter and then cover the trap with the leaves, dry leaves that were abundant there, and then travel many yards or more and appear in a different place, and it would be practically impossible to retrace. Again,
leaving behind the Kuchi tunnels, we moved back to the city to a totally different environment because we were curious to see the new shopping malls. Actually, there were two of them, one in front of each other, and those malls are 7 stories high, 3 above ground, with the most extensive variety of merchandise I have seen. From the very, very famous names in fashion, you can also buy all kinds of electronics, everything for the kitchen, cabinets, things for the house. I mean, it was absolutely incredible to see the variety of things that they sold. I would imagine that there must be a very extensive market to buy these things because they were very expensive, as they are in most of the world imported merchandise. Close by to our hotel, there was a very large market built in 1914 by the French that continues to be viable today. The amount of merchandise that we saw, well, it was not a surprise, similar to what we have seen in other cities, though the quality of the merchandise was not that good. Actually, you had to ask them if they had a little bit better merchandise. We bought some t-shirts, and they had very cheap ones and not so cheap ones, because I'm sure that the reason they sell everything at such low prices is because they won't last very long. Our group had already left because most of them went to Cambodia, but we stayed for another all day because our plane was leaving in the evening. So we had an opportunity to visit the museum. There are 2 big buildings, very close also to the hotel in the downtown. The they were not that super in the context that it needed more light, but the work was interesting, and I was fascinated by the different images, very contemporary and very well done. They're very good artists. They have this innate sense of color and composition. So I was very happy to have had that opportunity to see a museum which we had not seen up to then. The most outstanding building in the city is a building that it was built about 2 years ago by an architect which I had never heard, Carlos Alonso, probably Mexican. The building is 70 stories high. It's an office building, and they have a viewing platform in the 49th story. So we went to see because it gave us a fantastic view of Saigon, how it has spread, how much of it still has to be developed, and with a river going in the middle. It was a very nice way to kind of say goodbye to the city of Saigon, which we loved and enjoyed very, very much. From up above, we could see the market that we visited with all that incredible merchandise, and they had also a comparison of the tall buildings in the world and the photograph of the architect. The building was well done. It was interesting, and it stood out because it's so different from anything else they had at that time. We walked around a little bit more in the city and the center of town, enjoying the traffic, the number of motorcycles, as always, makes crossing the street very difficult. And we stopped at a coffee shop, #1 coffee shop in Saigon, because coffee is very, very important, and the Vietnamese say it is the best one in the world. And the last image is Christmas in Vietnam. We said goodbye to Saigon, looking again at all of the motorcycles covered up. Remember the good coffee we had, looked at all the Christmas decoration, and congratulate, and we're happy to say goodbye to a wonderful, wonderful group of people.